Okay, we are live. Hello, everyone. Shaun is here with me. Shaun, say hello to the beautiful people.
Hello, beautiful people.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for those of you who do manage to join us live. And if not, thank you for taking the time to watch this back if you are watching this now. We're going to be talking a lot about improving our relationship with food, as the headline says, and then probably spitfiring into whatever segues that brings us into. So we'll probably talk a lot about self-compassion and our upcoming masterclass on that. We'll probably talk a lot about clean eating and signs of orthorexia and other things which can be byproducts of this as well. So if any point you have a question, you can throw it in the comment box and I can bring it up on the screen like so. And you might have a little duck head, or you might be an unknown, depending on if you've given StreamYard your permission. So you do have to give StreamYard your permission to see your profile photo and name. So of course you don't have to do that if for any reason you are uncomfortable with that. So that's the officials out of the way. Shaun, throwing you on the spot and under the bus. What is your...
Right.
Yeah, you're welcome. You know, this is like coaching in a 101. Tell us a bit about your history with your relationship with food, actually, rather than me just putting you on the spot.
My relationship with food. I mean, do we actually have that long? I don't.
Give us a brief about me page bio.
It's been a rocky relationship over the
Yeah.
years. No, I mean, I used to always use food as a crutch, but also when I was, so I would eat when I was sad, but I'd also eat when I was happy. So it's it's always been a big part of my life, I guess. Food. I've always identified as the bigger guy, because I've always been the bigger guy. So I've got three brothers, and they're all skinny.
Right.
And they were always skinny as kids. And they're still skinny now, but as they're getting older, they start to get like the pot belly because they're skinny, but like they eat too much, and so they kind of get that vibe. But I've always been on the larger side, so I just identified as that, and I was the big brother. That's how I kind of saw myself. So I've carried that through to adult life, really. And I turn to food when I'm sad, and when I'm angry, and when I'm happy. And it's taken a long time for me to kind of overcome that, like detaching emotion from food. So, yeah, that's a kind of very brief overview. If you've got any questions, please ask.
I mean, it's good. Easier. Yeah, I mean, it's good to, good to obviously provide that overview, because I think obviously like we all have emotional relationships with food, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's important to know where it comes from. Like you mentioned there, you had a background with several brothers who were all a bit slimmer. And so maybe that provided you with a bit of insecurity because of being a bit bigger than they were. But also we're kind of conditioned to react to food emotionally. Like if we're a good boy or girl, we get a treat, and if we're not, then we don't. And when you're good at school, you get food, and if you're sad, you get food, and you get conditioned to emotionally eat, right? And emotional eating isn't disordered. It's completely natural, and it doesn't have to be the be all and end all either. We have food and drinks at weddings and at parties, and we celebrate with other people with food. And so it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is understanding where you might be using food as a crutch rather than dealing with the emotion. And if that's holding you back from reaching your health and fitness goals.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important that we say that, if you are going to weddings or parties or nights out or family meals and all that kind of stuff, like those are generally or that they should be few and far between, if you know what I mean. Like you shouldn't be doing that every day, right? Like that's the difference between that and actually, for me, I relax at the end of the day by eating a lot of food, for example. Like I don't as much anymore, but that's what I was doing. So it was an everyday kind of thing. Whereas, the things like that, what we're talking about there is special occasions. And unfortunately, when people are being too restrictive, for example, they decide that they can't even do that. Like, that's when it becomes a bit disordered, isn't it? It's like, well, I want a diet, or my goals don't allow me to go for a barbecue like once every 2 or 3 weeks or something. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
There's that side of it there. But yeah, of course, like I see food as a celebration, and I think it should be that way. But it's like I said, it's separating those lines. It's having clear lines of like we would, for example, I think I've said this before, but like we would go to church every Sunday, and if we agreed to go to church, we get McDonald's afterwards.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So of course we just wanted to go to church every Sunday because we knew we were getting 9
A
nuggets
McDonald's.
and large fries afterwards. Yeah. So there's that
Bribery.
difference, isn't
Bribery
there?
through
Yeah.
food.
Yeah, and also the little like subtle things like oh, if you you have to eat your vegetables before you get dessert type thing. There's that as well, isn't it? It's that reward structure. But I think, as I say, that's different from going to a barbecue for your mate's birthday type thing, right?
Yeah, it is. And as you mentioned, it's important to have clear lines between
Yeah,
what you're using food for.
yeah,
And that's only one part of our relationship with food, right? One part of our relationship with food is our relationship with emotional eating and how much of a handle we have over it. Because normal eating is deciding in the moment whether to indulge in certain cravings or not, whether to decide to have certain foods or not, and doing so in full control of the choice and without guilt of the choice. And this is the part of relationship with food I think many people struggle now because of the world that we live in. Right, I was on the radio yesterday and we were talking about this new tax on sugar and salt foods, and I said we've missed the mark because really the consumption of these foods is down anyway. Yet our health problems and the amount of people overweight have only gone up. And actually now we have huge extreme camps between the clean eating brigade of like has to be 100% natural, vegan, gluten free, paleo, flipping, whatever, homeostatic, which actually is a diet, if you can believe it or not. We have this entire clean eating camp which follows these extremes. Even personal trainers live a caricature life, really, because they're people who live in the gym all day. They train clients, they're on their feet all day, so hitting their step count is just a byproduct of their job. They train a couple times a day, most likely. They track all their food. They eat everything with my protein flave drops in it and add protein shakes to every water bowl that they consume. And they live that lifestyle because that's their job and they enjoy it. But that's not real life and that's not real people. So you have this kind of clean eating, PT, flexible dieting camp here. And then you've got the other extreme, which is like, well, if that's what fitness is, I don't want to be involved. I would rather just sit on the couch, eat Mars bars, and watch reruns on Netflix, right? So there's not many people in the middle ground, and unfortunately, that's a problem because now we have a thing of people thinking it has to be this way, and if it's not, they're being bad, they're being, naughty, they're being unclean, they're being dirty, and then that creates that rapid swing quickly to the other side, and you just have people oscillating from side to side rather than finding, okay, what's the middle ground for me, my goals, my values, and making that work.
Yeah, well, and what's good enough, right? There's that, because that thing of like the clean eating and all that kind of stuff leads to that kind of perfectionist thinking, isn't it? Of like, if my diet isn't perfect, then there's no point. There's no point doing it, right?
Yeah.
There's no kind of like I said, middle ground is like being good enough. But like we've always said, being in the middle isn't sexy. It doesn't get views on social media. It doesn't, people aren't impressed by your diet, or do you know what I mean? Like, there's that thing of like people want to be told that they're doing a good job type thing, and the only way that seems to happen nowadays is if you really stand for something that's like sexy, or that's like new, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you have to sit in an extreme camp almost to get views. That's the thing. That's what I mentioned on the radio yesterday. You know, like the middle ground isn't sexy and it doesn't sell, which is why you have diet books named after the most ridiculous protocols ever, and you have people sitting in these extreme camps because it's polarizing, and it also provides a simple answer. You know, like, oh, okay, it's keto is the way forward because carbohydrates are the devil. Oh, right, okay, paleo is the way forward because grains and dairy are the devil. Oh, right, okay, actually, meat is the devil, and therefore veganism is the way forward. Oh, no, actually, plants are the devil, and therefore carnivore is the way forward, and everything else in between, as I mentioned, the homeostatic diet, which I'm going to have to Google just because I had a bit of a... neither had I until I entered the comment section on an intermittent fasting group, which was clearly the worst thing for my Thursday productivity to do. Simply because someone asked, you know, what was better, cold or warm water? And this man said, you know, well, it's clearly cold water because your body has to heat it up. And therefore, because of that metabolic reaction, your metabolism speeds up. And therefore you burn more calories, you know, you burn more fat.
Just fucking making up science.
Well, it's a logical fallacy, isn't it? It's like, okay,
he's making it up, like blatantly making that up. Like, he's gone, well, you know what? Yeah, maybe if you drink cold water, your body's got heat. Yeah, that's what I'm going to go with.
Yeah, like your body's got to heat that up to be able to digest cold water. Jesus. So therefore, that metabolic reaction has to have an implication on the metabolism. Therefore, ergo, burning more fat. It's the same straw man argument that the insulin crew bring about with insulin causing fat gain. It's like, okay, well, fat storage goes up in these participants when insulin is produced. Carbohydrates stimulate insulin, ergo, carbohydrates cause fat gain. And it's like, no, you've missed several steps, and you're making assumptions that aren't rooted in actual data. And the funny thing is that I asked this man several times over, you know, do you have a research paper to back up your findings? And he said to me that research gets in the way of real progress. Science is a lie. If I wanted the truth, I should read Aristotle. And here's a blog on a website called homeostaticdiet.com, and said, bro, you know, if you really don't understand the metabolism, then I feel for your clients. He's like, don't. I hope you don't do any damage with the advice you give. And like, I'm not even replying to this thread anymore because it's literally worthless. But it'll provide me with content to bust later, so that's fine.
What a fuck nugget,
mate! Honestly, absolute wank puffin. We've digressed. So there are these extreme camps, but that's what provides this guilt, right? Is that I know from my back history with relationship with food is that, and Noel says, WTF. Yeah, mate, honestly, right? The absolute mental things that you come across when you join certain dieting and intermittent fasting groups on Facebook, that is for sure. But it provides us with content to bust on these lives and also in further videos. So I'm going to do a breakdown on intermittent fasting and homeostatic diet and things like that, because I found that producing memes, albeit funny, you kind of need to provide context to actually say this is why this is false, rather than just saying this is false, because otherwise you're just in a back and forth echo chamber of it becomes he said, she said, as opposed to this is what the data said versus this is what a blog and an opinion said. So for all of you guys watching here, there is a lesson actually in that blogs need to be well referenced by research papers. These research papers need to be peer reviewed and ideally not done in animals, and ideally be a better standard than simply observational and cross-sectional, which means that they need to be tested upon large sample sizes. They need to be stratified for their results. So ideally, you're looking for systematic reviews of meta-analyses, because these are comparisons of full data sets where they say that data says this data says this, therefore our best conclusion at the moment is this, as opposed to reading isolated research, because isolated research gets you in an issue. And that's what every single Netflix documentary has been based on since the dawn of Netflix, which is why you shouldn't go to Netflix for your nutrition advice either.
Well, yeah, like one study of 60 people showed that.
One observational study of people
Yeah.
going into a health food store for veganism showed that people who ate plant-based diets exercised more than people who ate meat diets. It's like, that is absolutely fucking worthless, you absolute cretin.
Yeah.
Right, anyway.
We're not generally angry people, I don't think.
No. I've got a good handle on my emotions these days.
Yeah.
You know, I get therapy and journal and all those things.
Yeah.
But this does rile me up, because this is why
of
people's
course.
relationship with food goes backwards, right? There's
Yeah.
a really great documentary, and it's been taken down by the BBC now, which is annoying. But it was by a doctor called Dr. Giles Yeo, and he has written a book recently, which I have bought but not read yet, which is all about body fat and body set point and things like that, which I think is going to be really interesting. But he presented a documentary called Clean Eating: The Dirty Truth. And it's all about the harsh end of clean eating, of going down the path of, you know, orthorexia, of having such an obsession of clean eating, such an obsession of eating 100% natural, that it becomes detrimental to people's emotional, physical, and mental health. So much so that he spoke with people who were, you know, advocating fully vegan, 100% natural diets, who then had deficiencies in certain things because they had such a narrow and restrictive diet. And there was also the tale of the doctor who was providing alkaline treatments for cancer, and actually he had a patient die because she refused normal medicine because of the alkaline diet, and how that was portrayed as this epitome of health. And it can provide real danger. You know, today's podcast episode, if you want to check it out, guys, Next Step Espresso, is with a man called Jason Wood, and he's 1 year on in his journey through orthorexia, which is an eating disorder based on the obsession of clean eating. And he got to a stage where he was massively underweight, and he couldn't even eat out at a restaurant with his husband because they wouldn't change pita bread for vegetables on the mezzanine starter that they wanted. And it caused him to have an emotional breakdown because he was so scared of wrecking his diet. That's the extreme end.
That's hard. Yeah, that's hard. But it's, you know what? It's so easy to get to fall into that as well. It doesn't take long at all for that switch to happen.
No.
When you decide you're going to go clean, you know.
Where does it end? Because I know for me, I've had 2 experiences with really poor relationships with food, and I was reflecting on it today. Because I was writing like a little bio, and I had the extreme end of like clean eating and paleo and things like that, of like, right, okay, I can't eat carbs, can't eat grains, whatever, which actually just led me to have horrific cheat days and cheat weekends, which I've written about before. But then actually, even after I found flexible dieting, my obsession became around tracking calories. And if I couldn't track calories, I would binge. I refused to have a meal out with my girlfriend at the time, who wanted to treat me for my birthday, because it wouldn't have fit my calories.
Yeah.
Because I'd already decided what I was having that day. And actually then when I dropped tracking calories, I had like no metric of what to do, and kind of just went sideways and backwards because I had no parameters anymore keeping me in check. And I just actually built really bad habits on food because I was just used to looking at an app to tell me how much to eat. And then when my lifestyle changed, my job changed, and my energy output changed, I had nothing to fall back on.
Yeah.
So I've kind of had both experiences, both extremes.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's where the hunger and fullness cues and stuff like that come in so importantly. And it's hard because there's been a big shift in the past, 20 years maybe, of like ultra processed food being so readily available and stuff like that. Like if you're not tracking, it's very easy to consume a large amount of calories every day without really thinking about it. And so, but I think it's happened so fast that we haven't been able to catch up with, it's like kind of just crept in really, really kind of suddenly that there's all this food available. And if you're of a certain, if you have a certain income, disposable income and stuff like that, food is very readily available to you. And we can now order food to our doorsteps and on Deliveroo and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
And that's happened quite quickly, really, in terms of the history of the world. Do you know what I mean? It's been in the past kind of 20 years, right? And so we've got this whole generation of people of kind of like our age that now have so much food available to them that we kind of sometimes need that little bit of right, I'm going to start tracking calories, because so often when we start working with people, they're shocked at how many calories they're eating.
Yeah.
Right. That they're like, oh, gee, there's that many calories in that food. Like, wow, I had no idea, type thing. Right. And that's when those things are important. So that's like the kind of beginning of the spectrum, right? Of like, right, so this is a healthy thing to do, to track my calories for a little while to see what I'm actually consuming.
Mm.
And it's then being able to step away from that and start to go into like your natural, cues of hunger and cues of fullness. And well, I know that this is high calorie and this is low calorie. And, I know that this is in between. And it's as you said, like, but when you get to the point of now everything, you track literally everything, then that's when we start to get down the kind of, and I can't do without tracking. Then that's when that's the other end of it, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I listened to a really great podcast yesterday from Sigma Nutrition. So Danny Lennon, the host of Sigma Nutrition Radio. It's the only other nutrition podcast I'd recommend apart from obviously Next Step Espresso.
Yeah.
He's fantastic, and he's got such a great network now from doing the podcast for like 6-7 years that he gets the best guests. Like him and Alan together do podcasts together, and they're very research based. Like Alan writes a research review, and he's really good at reading it. So actually, it's one of the best sources for going to debunking myths. But they had a podcast with Jake Linarden from Australia, who runs the account Break Binge Eating.
Okay.
And they had a podcast, and it was back in December, but it was a podcast all about disordered eating practices and then leading into eating disorders, because there are clear differences between disordered eating and eating disorders, right? And disordered eating are certain habits and portrayals that all of us will identify with from time to time, and then more so at different periods of our life, depending on our goal. And he said, right, look, if you're tracking calories, some people will get them triggered into disordered eating habits. Other people won't. It's definitely mindset based and personality based, which is why you've got to screen your clients really well before you suggest it, because and then some people might, as you said, transition over time. So you've got to be aware of it. And he even says, look, if you're going to track calories, do it only for a short period of time, because your clients need to know that there's an exit strategy involved as well. They're not just going to be doing this indefinitely for the rest of their lives. But he said, keeping it flexible is key. So flexible calorie targets, flexible macronutrient ranges, educating people on the mindset of going higher and lower when they need to, and even educating them on the fact that food labels are inaccurate in themselves because they're only measured once, and then food is mass produced, so that there are going to be inaccuracies in the method anyway.
Yeah.
So he just sort of kind of provided a great framework of like, look, if you're going to do it, great. It's a great for an awareness piece, especially if you've been spinning your wheels for a while, not knowing how to create a calorie deficit. It's one of the best ways to think, oh, right, fuck, like I didn't realize that having 3 tablespoons of olive oil was that many calories, or eating half a jar of peanut butter would set me back, or that my healthy granola was in fact like 800 calories.
Yeah, it's as I say, it's a good education and awareness thing, isn't it? But it shouldn't be, I think when we first started working together, I was tracking calories, but I must have tracked for 2 or 3 years, I think, at one point. That's a long time to be tracking your food every day. And I'd kind of go like fall off it and then think, oh shit, I need to get back into tracking calories, right? Because otherwise I'm gonna like put on loads of weight or whatever. Which is a very normal thing. It's because whatever's worked for you before, you're probably going to go and do it again.
Yeah, because you're limited by your experience, right? It's like you and I both now have gone through further coaching practices and books and education to have far more tools in the toolbox to work with people and say, look, that's just one method.
Yeah.
And you also then need to work with the person, because you can say to the person, look, okay, you've done this for a while now. You are aware of what calories are in what, but you're being inconsistent with this method, and there is a reason there. And maybe it's time to do something different and move on. And again, the client's always going to be the author of their own story. And actually for you to have that experience has led you to where you are now. And it was the same experience as me. Like I jumped in and out of it many times, particularly in and out of the kind of the CrossFit world where energy needs were far more important because of then my performance in the gym. There were, more stakes involved.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's like, man, I couldn't motivate myself to track calories even if I tried because I just don't care enough. Like I even downloaded an app. And this is why real life coaching will always be better than apps, by the way, because apps do not account for the individual. They do not account for the psychology of the individual and the behavior of the individual. And you then can't provide a roadmap if things go unnecessarily awry. And when these kind of apps only work on body weight data as well. And you and I know how fickle body weight is. Like if you and I ate a lot of food one day, we wouldn't necessarily put on a lot of body fat in one instance. But if we put on body weight and then this app was designed to track your body weight average algorithm and then was like, well, you've put on weight, so therefore here's less calories. Yeah. You're fucked. You're shooting yourself in the foot. Yeah. But anyway, I downloaded this app and it's a diet app where it's like, here's this many calories, track your body weight several times a week, track your food, and then we'll change your macros based on how your body weight changes. Mate, I haven't even opened the app. Paid for it. No, I've not even opened it.
It's not Thingy. It's not Thingies. Is it the
Is what?
Is it the it's not the Lane Norton one, is it?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, it is that one. Yeah.
I thought it might be.
yeah, it's that app. And I was like, oh, okay, like I'll check this out. Maybe a bit of market research, maybe a bit of experience. I could do with maybe tracking my food again. Not to mention that I'm not living at my house this week, and so I don't have the same kind of foods and stuff with me, and I have to be a lot more on the fly with my eating. Although scrambled eggs with sourdough bread, mixed vegetables, and tomatoes.
Nice.
So #health with an F. But also I realized to myself, look, I'm so. Thanks, Olive. I'm so adamant of finding the routine that works for you, and also educating people who have got stuck calorie tracking that there is another way.
Yeah.
That I was like, no, I just need to go back to eating slowly, stopping at 80% full, refining my hunger and appetite cues. Just because the last few weeks I've kind of just fallen off of it, and I was like, but I know that I can get back there and redo that. And I thought to myself, Johnny, if you're going to be talking about this a lot about how tracking is a method, use it temporarily, learn about food, and then move away from it, you've got to walk that walk. Yeah, absolutely. So I just didn't open the app, and I've cancelled the subscription, and I've gone back to doing what I know works, because I've done it with so many clients now where they've dropped body fat like that. Yeah, literally just from listening to their hunger cues and retuning to them.
Yeah, and again, I think that's a thing that. I think that's one of the most important things is the hunger and fullness cycle, and then also figuring out what your triggers are when it comes to the emotional side of eating. Like if you can get a handle on both of those things, like everything will just kind of improve like drastically. Do you know what I mean? Because it's that being in tune with yourself, isn't it? And like not relying on an external algorithm to decide how you eat. It's effectively that's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, and I nearly did the same thing with my exercise programming. I nearly got an algorithm based app, but it's a functional fitness based app, which effectively means CrossFit. So it's like here's the way to get fitter at all these movements that actually I don't give a shit about anymore. So I was like, this literally won't work for me either. But this is why either designing your own programs through guidance of other people or getting guidance from a professional helps, because you can then talk with someone about your values and your goals and what's going on with life and actually individualize things to you, as opposed to just getting broad paint strokes. I lost my point. No, that was the point. It's very well said in that the two things you need the most are that emotional awareness, that mindfulness as well, the noticing, naming, to be like, this is what is actually going on. And then that cluing into hunger and appetite, because even something as simple as I was on the go yesterday afternoon and I grabbed a sandwich because I was on my way to cricket and wasn't going to be home until gone 9. And this was at like 4:00 when I was leaving. I'll grab a sandwich for my afternoon meal, but rather than eating it in the car, which I've done, I took it to the ground, ate it slowly, sat down with no other distractions, like not even my phone. For one, I actually enjoyed the sandwich more, obviously, and it sat down better because I actually digested it. And I did finish it because it wasn't a big sandwich.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show, even things like eating in your car and stuff like that, like
it's all distraction, isn't it?
You're not paying attention.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're not paying attention to what you're feeling and thinking around food and around that time. I mean, one of my recent clients was, in the camp of, I eat really healthy. I don't know what's happening, which is such a common thing for us, isn't it?
And we've both been there too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But she was basically drinking like 2 bottles of wine on a Friday night, which then led to a lot of like weekend overeating. And the reason she was doing it, like, it was that kind of thing of like stories we tell ourselves again of like, I'm drinking these bottles of wine because I need to relax because I've had a tough week, so I deserve to have something. Do you know what I mean? But she didn't realize that actually, like, having that to relax was causing a lot of stress over the weekend because they felt like, it was a thing she did with her husband as well. So they both felt like crap the next day. And that kind of just kept, like, poor sleep and then feeling more tired, feeling hungover, etc., etc. And it's just like that vicious cycle. But it took kind of taking stock of what her feelings were rather than, because they were actually, she was actually putting it into my fitness pal. And it's like, so because she was tracking it, it was like, well, then it must be okay. But that doesn't then actually lead you to think about the effect it's having on you, over the weekend, right? It's just like, it's relying on an app to tell you, well, this is okay. And it's not. You're not listening to your cues and your actual thoughts and feelings and, what your body's feeling.
No. And again,
even now, because this is going to, like, I think this is important to say.
Go on.
Like, it's 12:30. So I was driving back late last night from a gig. So I didn't get in until 3. But so I had a sandwich from a service station at like 1 a.m. Because eating helps keep me awake.
I was going to say, were you hungry though, mate?
No, but I was actually a bit hungry because it's 1 o'clock. By that time, like, I've had dinner at 7. It's not like I've gone to bed.
Yeah.
But I was literally just thinking to myself, oh, I should eat now. Like, whilst we was having this conversation, I should eat because it's 12:30. But I didn't actually get up till 10, and I'm not hungry. So it was like, I just thought that was quite a like pertinent thing to say. Do you know what I mean? I'm just going to wait till I'm hungry now. Like, yeah.
Two questions I think everyone should ask themselves before they put anything in their mouths are, what else is going on here, and am I actually hungry?
Yeah.
Because
now it's like, well, I should be eating because it's 12:30. Why haven't I eaten yet?
Yeah, time-based hunger.
Yeah.
Because of routine. And then you also have hedonic hunger, because people might think, oh, I'm eating healthier and I'm eating less, therefore I'm hungry, because that's what you get on a diet. You get hunger. There's the restriction-based hunger of like, oh man, I'm not having these foods that I used to have, therefore I want them even more. That's another reason not to ban yourself of anything and give yourself permission to eat the food that you want, which doesn't mean everything at once. It just means anything you like. If you really want it, which is, again, a question to ask yourself, do I really want it? So what else is going on here? Am I actually hungry, and do I really want it?
Yeah. And
what else is happening today, this week, context?
And part of my thinking was, well, if I don't eat now, I'm going to get really hungry later and like eat loads of food. That's part of my thought process. Like, obviously I can now know that that's my thought process and do something about it, if you know what I mean? But a lot of people will just go, well, I need to eat because,
But you're bringing in a really clever element of mindfulness there, Shaun, and cognitive behavior coaching, which is thought reframing and thought challenging, because you're saying to yourself, okay, why do I think that? Is that rooted in reality? And actually, what else could be going on here? And you need to have that mindfulness in the moment to say, okay, I'm thinking this. In the past, I have left it too late to eat and therefore been hangry and ate more, which is a behavior I want to avoid. But I'm not at the level of hungry enough yet, so I'm going to wait. And that's where the hunger game comes in, right? It's the whole, you want to wait until you're about a 7 or 8 out of 10 hungry before you eat, and then eat when you're stop eating at about a 2 or a 3 for weight loss, or a 1 to 2 for normality and health, and maybe just a bit beyond that if you're going for muscle gain, because you're going to need to eat in a surplus for muscle gain. And hard gainers, you just don't eat enough food, so fucking get over it. But clean eating is an issue with that, because you eat too much nutritious food and you don't eat enough chocolate milk. So therefore, hashtag chocolate milk and peanut butter, eat more of it. And stop complaining, you twats, because I've never had an issue putting on weight in my life. By the by, those questions are important to ask yourselves, right? And if we circle back to the original topic of the conversation, which is improving your relationship with food, it is removing that guilt of food first and foremost, because we need to understand and drill into our heads over and over and over again, as Nathan Sykes once sang, that it's not bad to eat a certain food or to drink a certain drink. What is bad is your response to doing that and how it might be affecting your health and your goals long term. But having a glass of wine, having a burger, having some chocolate, having some cake or a donut, these aren't bad things. The foods aren't going to make you unhealthy. They're not nutrient void. They're not empty calories. They're not full of sugar. They're not going to kill you. And so we need to get over that scaremongering, provide a bit of balance in our lives, and then from there we can actually start to get to the crux of what's really going on, rather than going through perpetual cycles of restrict and binge, restrict and binge.
Yeah. Good summary there.
Probably a great place to leave it, right? I'm just going to drop the mic and fuck off on my dog walk. Right, guys, thank you so much for those of you that watch this live. I have noticed a few of you obviously commenting and a few eyes in the top left corner. So Shaun and I are going to do these regularly. We will set them up as events when we get to them, but Fridays at 12 is a great time because it's Friday Fun Day. So you have my permission to take the afternoon off. If I don't know why I find myself so funny. If you want more from us, then if you head to nextstepnutrition.co.uk/IG, that's our IG link tree, and you can find links to our freebies, our coaching services, and also our upcoming Don't Be a Dick to Yourself masterclass, where we're going to help you guys with such great behaviors of cognitive reframing, cognitive thought challenging, and other mental skills you need to #live your best life. So go check those out. If you ever have any questions, drop them in our free group, Habits and Weight Loss Made Simple, if you're not there already, or leave us a comment on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook, or wherever you've watched this from.
Nice one, guys.
Johnny out. Shaun out.